Thank you for coming this morning. This is part 3 of our spring vegetable gardening series for North Texas. And today we're going to show you the organic way that we recommend for growing tomatoes and peppers. And so if you live anywhere in North Texas and you want to grow tomatoes, this video is for you. And we're going to start by handing it over to Tammy, and she's going to tell you.
So this morning we're going to talk about the different tomatoes, what grows the best in this area, the difference between a determinate and an indeterminate tomato, how to keep insects and disease away from your tomatoes after you've planted them, because a lot of us, we get them in the ground, they start looking really pretty, and then poof, they're gone. So we're going to talk about all of that this morning. I was talking to the audience before we started about how well our demo garden is doing. Everything that we have planted is doing very well, has come up, is producing. The only thing that has not worked well is my carrots. I don't know what I've done wrong for them. I need to study on that one a little bit. But the onions have gone wild over the last 4 weeks. They've gone from little bitty things that were so short you couldn't see them for everything else to being towering over everything else. Our garlic and potatoes that we did last week have come last week, 2 weeks ago. It was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago have come up and are starting. The potatoes will probably be another week or two before we heal them. But they're already about 2 inches tall, so that's good. If y'all have been following along, my TP garden that we're doing blew away during one of the storms, and so I had to rework my TP. I got longer bamboo this time, so that it goes all the way into the bottom of the pots. And they're doing really well. The peas have really started climbing, and my beans, seems like overnight, decided they were coming up and growing. So that's good. They have gotten a little bit of cold damage 2 nights ago. Last night it doesn't seem like they got any cold damage. So I need to follow the weather a little bit closer. I knew it was going to get cold. I just didn't think I would do damage because I didn't think it was going to frost. So we'll start with tomatoes now. One of the questions with tomatoes is, what's the coolest temperature that they can take? Tomatoes can go down to like 35. After 35, then you're going to start seeing some damage. And they can't take frost on their leaves. So 35 degrees, my growers grow in cold houses instead of hot houses. And so all the tomatoes that have come in don't have to be hardened off, because they grow them in cooler temperatures to start with, so it's not going to hurt to take them from our place and put them in the ground. You just need to watch and make sure that nothing really cold is coming. This next week, I think our coolest temperature that I've seen is supposed to be about 42. I know if you live a little bit further up, like Denton, you're going to get into the 30s, the upper 30s, but you should be okay. Just watch and make sure that the wind is not still. If you've got any kind of wind, you're not going to get frost. But if it's totally still and it hits down to 35 or so, you'll start getting frost on your plants. And at that point, you want to cover up those tender little guys. And you can do that with the frost cloth that you got for Snowvid to keep those safe. When you're picking out your tomato, it depends a lot on the area that you are putting it in. If you've got a small area, if you're doing it in pots, if you're doing it in a raised bed that's not really big, you're going to want to pick out a determinate tomato, because determinate tomatoes are more round and compact. They still get 4 to 5 feet tall, but they're not going to get crazy like a super sweet 100 that's an indeterminate and can get 8 feet tall. So you want to look at that first. Second, in Texas, we have really warm springs and summer, and so the size of the tomato will depend on how much production you get. So if you're using the big beefsteaks, the slicing tomatoes, that kind of thing, once our temperature gets about 90, 95 during the day, or our nighttime temperatures are not getting below 70, they quit producing. So they're not going to put any more flowers on, they're not going to give you any more fruit. Whereas the smaller, mid-size, grape, cherry, those size, celebrity, they keep producing all through the summer, even with our harder temperatures. Smaller the tomato, the more it's going to produce. Sweet 100s, Rapunzel, cherries, a lot of those smaller guys are going to produce the whole summer for y'all. And do really, really well. So after you've chose the type of tomatoes that you want, most of the ones that you see around now are going to be more disease resistant. They're going to be resistant to a bunch of the wilts. So our hybridized tomatoes and the really older varieties like Celebrity and those guys have a resistance to a lot of the blights and diseases that go around. But you do need to know that proper care of the tomato is going to keep the blight and that under. She has a problem with blight, and we'll talk some about it. Do you know what kind of blight you have? Okay, a lot of that yellowing at the bottom can be nothing more than a water issue. Tomatoes like an even moisture. They don't want to dry out and then be watered, that kind of thing. And they like to be watered first thing in the morning. So we need to be watering first thing in the morning. You do not water from the top, you water from the ground. And they also like being mulched. And so we'll need to mulch around them. The other thing that can be causing those yellow leaves is spider mite. Spider mites love tomatoes, but they also love anything that's under stress. So if your plant is stressing out because it's not getting the water the way it wants to, then the spider mite will come in and just attack. And the spider mite, if you look on the bottom of that yellow leaf and kind of feel of it, you might feel like a grittiness. Also, you can take a white piece of paper, tap the leaf, and you can see the little pieces of dirt walk around because it's that small. But you'll see the little pieces of dirt walk around and you'll know you need to do something. One of the things that people have been doing for years is companion planting, and marigolds are great to plant around your tomatoes because your spider mite's going to go to the marigold before it goes to your tomato, and so that kind of helps with that. Oh, back to the tomato. Once you've chosen your tomato, you want to make sure that it's in 8 hours of sunlight. Can't do anything without full sun. When you decide to when you put your tomato in the soil, I said soil, not dirt. You're going to take the first probably 4 leaves off of here, and you can take all 4 of these leaves off. And then you're just pinching them off. And then when you plant him, you're going to plant him all the way up to here, because these stems will grow roots, and they'll keep growing roots. And in doing this is going to make for a sturdier plant. It's going to make a bigger main stem. before you put him in the soil. When you put him in the soil, dig your hole, you can add soft rock phosphate, you can add Epsom salt. I did a little bit of studying about Epsom salt because I've had so many people say something about fertilizing with Epsom salt. And so what Epsom salt does is it adds magnesium and sulfate into the soil, which in turn lets the plant take up all of the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and stuff that's in there. So it's an additive. You would start, when you're starting with your new guys, start with a tablespoon of salt, of the Epsom salt, put it in the bottom of the hole, cover it up a little bit, then plant your plant in there. And then if you're going to do granular and just spread it on top of the soil after it's gotten a little bigger, about once a month, you can put 2 tablespoons around the plant area. Make sure that you're watering it in and you see it dissolve. The other way that you can use it is you can put 2 tablespoons in a gallon of water. Let it dissolve, which it dissolves really quick. The stuff that you use in gardening is a very fine grade. It's almost like sugar, like a coarse sugar or something. It's very, very fine. And so it dissolves really, really easy. And then you spray it for a foliar feed. And you can do that every 2 weeks. One of the things that this also does is it helps with blooms. It helps create more blooms. And it helps with the fruit production on them. Works really well for both peppers and for your tomatoes. So you can use that. Some people talk about pinching back their tomatoes, and it's kind of like whether to pinch or not to pinch. If you've got an indeterminate tomato, I would say pinch, and pinch as hard as you can. If you start with a 6-inch little plant, you can pinch off the first top 2 inches of it. What that does is it causes the stem to be heavier and it causes it to branch out. The other thing that you need to do is, as the plant's growing, you'll get sucker limbs that come in, like here at the corners of all of these guys. You need to be pinching back that, and you need to be creating airspace. Because if you've ever grown an indeterminate tomato, I mean, that thing, it gets wild. And you've got arms going everywhere. You can't reach in and get the tomatoes because there's just not a whole lot of space. And so if you'll keep that pinched back, you'll get a stronger, nice shape. So you're just pinching to create the shape that you want. So that helps a lot too. Determinate tomatoes are bred to have that patio shape, to where you're not getting all of the crossing and that kind of stuff, but you still won't have the air space that you need. And so you can go in there and pinch back to where you have a little bit better air circulation. That way your tomatoes are getting the sunlight and everything that it needs. Insect problems are going to be tomato hornworms. Everybody gets tomato hornworms. If you'll use BT, I can't pronounce it.
Bacillus thuringiensis.
Bacillus thuringiensis. BT works really well for me. It is an organic control for any of your worms, caterpillars, that kind of thing. You can spray it on your plant. Don't spray it on your blossom. I don't like spraying anything around the flowers because you don't want to hurt any of our pollinators that come in. Because even a nasty little hornworm is going to be a beautiful moth when it comes out. So we don't want to do any damage to that. Pruning, make sure that when you are pruning, if you're not using your fingers and you're using, say, your utensil or your clippers and that, make sure that you clean them before you start pruning, because anything that you've pruned back that had disease or that, you can transmit to the next item. So always make sure that you clean it. You can clean them with an alcohol and water mixture, bleach, probably vinegar. I mean, we all use vinegar around here because it's so acidic. So, but make sure that you clean them before you go in to do any of your pruning, and that's good for everything. Drawing in your pollinators, because even though tomatoes are self-pollinating, you still need a pollinator to come in and visit this flower and visit that flower. It's when it says self-pollinating, you still need the pollen to move from one flower to the next. And so your pollinators are going to be the best way to do that with your bees, your butterflies, any of those guys. So you need to plant to draw those guys in. So African blue basil does absolutely wonderful. The basil, you can eat it, and it draws in the bees like you would not believe. And it's just the little honeybees. It's nothing that's going to sting you as long as you don't squish it. But you can do that. You can use any kind of flower that produces a nectar. Borage, and I ordered you borage. The marigolds will help. The marigolds help. So you can, with your little garden, you can plant some flowers around, or since I'm, like with me, I've got the raised bed, but I'm doing a lot of this growing in pots also, that you could do your color or your herb pots to bring in and set them around, and it will work really well. But that will bring in a lot more pollinators for you, and you'll get a better stand. A lot of times you will have your tomato and it'll be dropping its buds or dropping the fruit off before, when it's teeny tiny. It's usually a calcium deficiency that's causing that, and when it gets bottom end rot, it's a calcium deficiency. So you can use the CalMag to add calcium into it. A lot of people crush eggshells to put in. There's other ways of getting calcium into the soil around the thing. We also carry a product that's called Blossom End Rot, isn't it? Yep, Blossom End Rot. We just don't have it right this minute because it's coming from one of the trucks that don't want to come in. So you can use that, and you can spray it on, and it adds calcium too. I will tell you, if you're going to use your eggshells, make sure you crush them really fine. And before you do that, pop them in the microwave them for about 5 seconds. That membrane that's inside the eggshell, it will turn loose, and you want to discard that, because you don't want protein in your gardens, because you just want the calcium of the eggshell. A lot of blight will happen. There's so many different types of blight, and I'm not real good on them. I do know that if you start seeing blight, you want to cut it off, okay? You've got to sterilize your pruners in between every cut, because if you cut and you're cutting off the blight and then you move somewhere else to cut before sterilizing, you've just moved the blight to the next spot. So you want to make sure that you sterilize in between each one. You can spray with this guy. It's fire blight. It's actually streptomycin. It's antibiotic. A lot of people use it on their peach tree or on their pear trees, apple trees, that kind of thing that are prone to fire blight, but it'll also work on your veggies. You mix it up into a liquid and spray. Streptomycin is an antibiotic, and it takes care of bacteria. and blight is a bacteria. Peppers. We're going to peppers now, and I don't have a pepper. But peppers are something that gets started really when it gets warmer. They need warm temperatures. But peppers like their nighttime temperatures to be, at least 50, 60 degrees, and we're just not there yet. I know with this beautiful, beautiful weather that we've been having, everybody is all gung-ho to get out and get their gardens going. But being in Texas, we typically have a really good freeze around Easter. So watch your gardens really, really close. Your peppers, you have sweet peppers, you have really hot peppers. Once the heat hits, you'll grow them and they'll be this high, and you'll think, well, it's not doing anything. I just got a beautiful plant. And then all of a sudden, when our really hot, ugly weather hits us, they just break out in blooms, and you start having more peppers than you can shake a stick at. And that's all of them, whether they're a hot pepper or a sweet pepper. They really need our Texas heat to get going. But, you start it now and protect it, you'll have a really big plant when it does decide it's going to really start producing for you. So it's not too early to plant it, just have to be a little more careful with it. She wants to know if we can do peppers in one of the grow bags and do it on a driveway or a concrete area to where it's going to get more heat to kind of give it a extra oomph. And I say, yeah, you could probably do that, because when you're out on your grass and green all around you, it's a little cooler, and when you're on the concrete, it's a lot hotter. So you might get a quicker fruit set that way. We're demo and experimenting this whole class, so if you do that and you see that it works really well, then I'll bring in more of those grow bags next year, and I'll say, if you want peppers early, you better do it this way.
Soil for the container.
I'm using this Mayer raised bed mix. Thank you. I'm using the Mayer raised bed mix. It's already mixed. It has lots of good stuff for it. That's what's in these beds, along with cotton burr, rejuvenate, and there was one other thing. Green sand. Thank you. And I mixed it all up together in the bed, but it works really well. Just in the containers themselves, I mixed it in the wheelbarrow about 1 to 1 to 1, and then put them in the pots. And everybody seems to be thriving pretty well. It already has, nutrients and that stuff in it, but it's been a month, and so I'm fixing to do a fish and seaweed fertilization. I'm just very partial to fish and seaweed. You can use the tomato tone, you can use garden tone. It's all good stuff. It's not going to hurt anything. You could use the tomato tone on the whole garden, and then every 3 weeks spray with your fish and seaweed. It's not going to hurt anything. When you're doing organic fertilizations and it's not as easy to burn something up as is when you're using chemical. So, and we stay away from anything chemical. So, you can still burn things up. I use too much earthworm castings, and my ferns burn up. So, it's a little hot. Yes?
Containers. Can you use just like a 5-gallon container, or what would you use?
Oh, yeah. He wants to know what kind of containers to use. As you can see, I'm using buckets that my landscape crew brought back after our jobs, and the smallest one is 5-gallon, and I'm doing anywhere from a 5-gallon to 15-gallon. I wouldn't go any smaller than 5 gallon. If you have 5 gallon paint buckets that have been cleaned out really, really well, anything like that, you can use it. Just make sure that you are putting in plenty of water holes, because none of our veggies like to sit with water on their roots. They like having a lot of water, but they don't want to keep their feet wet. So you'll want to make sure you drill plenty of holes. But I mean, that was one of the things that we talked about the very first class, is there's nothing set in stone on what you can grow in or what your raised bed should be made out of. It just has to hold the soil and the plant and have good drainage. So have fun with it. I mean, my kids are using tractor tires, and they had used tractor tires, and you know, tractor tires are pretty deep, and they've put them on the ground, put the soil in, and they're growing in those. So have fun. Okay, she wants to know what the suckers look like. When you have your tomato plant, your suckers are going to grow right next to another stem. And so you don't want 2 stems right there. So you're going to pinch out the new one. Okay? Anything that comes down here that you don't like, you can pinch that out too. Yes, ma'am. Heirlooms versus hybrids. An heirloom tomato is going to be a tomato that's been out forever. Like your celebrity. Celebrity hasn't been messed with. They haven't taken a celebrity and crossed it with another guy and came up with somebody totally new. All right? So that's going to be your heirloom. Hybrids are going to be somebody that they've used the best qualities of this tomato and the best qualities of this tomato and put them together to make a whole different guy. It's about 50-50 whether you want to do heirlooms or your hybrids. Hybrids are going to be probably a little more disease resistant because they've been bred to be more disease resistant, whereas an heirloom has just been around for so long that the diseases didn't exist when they started. Like the Purple Cherokee. Purple Cherokee is one of our oldest tomatoes. The Indians used to grow it. So, I mean, it's been around, it's a tried and true. And it produces really well. It is a little bit bigger, so it does kind of stop producing after a while when the heat hits. But it produces a beautiful tomato, and they taste wonderful. So, another one like that is and it's a hybrid, but it's a green zebra. And those have the best taste in the world, but every time I've tried to grow them, I get about 5 tomatoes off of a whole plant. But it's a great tomato. Great tomato. That's mine. I just let my mask go wherever it wants. Yes, sir.
When a plant stops producing, you just yank it out, put something else in?
He wants to know when a plant stops producing, if he just yanks it out and puts something else in. With the availability of the tomatoes and that kind of stuff, yeah, I would yank it out, grow something else, and then when our fall tomatoes come in mid-August, end of August, then replant for your fall tomato crop. Some people try to nurse that tomato plant all summer long, and it's very hard to nurse it all the way through the summer to get fall. But that being said, that's usually the bigger tomatoes, and with our small tomatoes, like the little grapes and that kind of thing, they produce throughout that heat. I mean, our poor little one that we had last year, I mean, she was the ugliest thing that I'd ever seen, but she was still producing tomatoes in October, and good tomatoes. They were very good little tomatoes. We'd come out here and we'd start harvesting, and it was like, I can't believe she had that many on. And then 3 days later come out and she has just as many. That was Rapunzel. that did that. And she's really cute. She puts her tomatoes on a string, and so it looks, yeah, a really long little string of little bitty tomatoes, and they're very, very good. They're about the size of a cherry. So, but they were great. I'd come out here and just grab a handful and start eating them as I walked around. Of course, I do that with these things too. I'll grab me a leaf and eat it. You learn real quick to look at everything that you're going to pop in your mouth first, because aphids don't taste well. Just so y'all know, I mean, they're really kind of bitter, and so you don't want those. But other than that, everything was great. Are there any more questions?
Marigolds are good too.
Yes. Oh, eating them? I haven't eaten one. Now, I've done roses, pansies, those kind of things, but I don't like the smell of a marigold, so I probably have trouble eating one. Have you tried that, Joyce? No. So marigolds are supposed to taste really good, and you sprinkle them into your salad, and they're spicy. Kind of peppery. You need to do that today. Joyce eats salads almost every single day, and she has been coming out and harvesting out of our garden. She has ate some of our onions already. The purple ones are pretty hot. And what did you think about the yellow ones? Because I noticed you did the yellow one yesterday.
Yeah, I like the yellow ones better, I think.
A little sweeter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How big are they now?
They're pretty big.
Yeah, they are.
That was once before. I just.
Oh, well, they're nice.
Oh yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah, see? Here's lunch. There's your lunch, Joyce. That's all.
Oh, and marigolds.
Oh, yeah. We'll have marigold and onion with your vinaigrette.
Yeah.
There anything else I can talk to y'all about? Yes, ma'am.
The fertilizers you have there,
Yes.
are they a pretty balanced look?
They're, the tomato is 346. The garden tone is 344.
Peppers can get scalded if they're in the sun.
She says that peppers can get scalded if they're in the sun, probably around August. Our sun is so heavy or so bright that it can scald your little peppers, which makes the skin kind of hard. So with that, I would say shade cloth, not a heavy one, but a shade cloth to give it a little bit of relief in the afternoon. Yes, ma'am. Raised bed versus containers. We're going to do that. I'm growing 2 determinate tomatoes in our raised bed, and I'm going to put it indeterminate in a pot and put him over there, just to see the difference and what we're going to get. I'm going to do the black creme because I've been playing with him. Oh, that's not black creme, excuse me. The purple Cherokee, because I've been playing with him. The other one I want to do is Celebrity in here. And then I'll probably either do Sweet 100 or do a Rapunzel again because they're so prolific. But it'll just kind of show, y'all can see the difference between the determinate and indeterminate and see what problems we have, which I'm sure we're going to have problems with, everybody does, but we can talk about how y'all fixed it or how we're fixing it, that kind of thing. I hope y'all are enjoying all of these classes. They're a little bit different than what we've done in the past. We've never done a continuous series. We've always done, okay, well, this week's going to be this and this week's going to be that. I thought maybe this would be a little bit easier and a little bit more fun so that you could see that, we're gardening on concrete. Anybody can garden as long as you've got some sun. I'm going to use bamboo this year. It's going to be a little different, but I'm going to try to cage everything with bamboo instead of using, something I either want to reuse or, repurpose. So I'm trying to do that in our garden just to see how well we do. She has a yard full of bamboo, so she's my supplier. So yeah, I'm going to try doing that and see how far we get and see what happens. I've seen some really cool things made out of PVC. You can go in and get PVC. You can cut the PVC, use the or the corner brackets, and you can put your arms off whichever way. What's really cool about that is if you use a really bigger pipe in the middle, you could actually put your water and fertilizer down in it, and it would go into the ground and out. So that's my tip for the day. Okay, I want to thank everybody.